The Jell-O program starring Jack Benny with now, ladies and gentlemen, this being the first day of daylight saving time, we bring you a man who saves time, money, and old pieces of string, Jack Benny.
Hello again. There's a Jack Benny who also saves paper bags. They come in mighty handy, too.
Hello again. This is Ben Hitchcock Cross talking to you. And this has got to be the third time in a row where I must have recorded a 15, 20-minute video here without sound. So that's thrilling, but that's where we're at. I'm sure I am going to recapitulate the video that I just did equally as heartfelt, equally as warmly, and equally amazing. So aren't you in store for a treat? God. So here are the themes that I would like to talk about today, which is number one, we are a kick up, kiss down channel. What do I mean by that? John Bolton, I think, was famous. It's from the Bush administration, later the Trump administration, famous for kicking up and kicking down and kissing up. So that means somebody who's always a sycophant, always nice to, always defers to subordinates, and slavish devotion to one's masters, let's put it like that. Then, in the alternative, behind closed doors, if you will, they are kicking down, so they're torturing their subordinates. Another person from the Bush days who did that was Condoleezza Rice. I can imagine, or I recall several recordings of her torturing people below her, primarily like sales assistants, things like that, saying something like, "You're an idiot, that's why you're making minimum wage," or sort of vice versa, "You're making minimum wage because you're an idiot," which is, she would have to say that, but many people don't. Let's put it, she would have to think that, but many people don't go out of their way to say that out loud. When people have the need to bully, you gotta wonder why. Why do you, when it's apparent that you have all the power, why do you need to rub it in everybody's face? Is there an insecurity there or some other thing that we need to be talking about? That's how I feel about kissing up and kicking down. I think in contradistinction here, that's what we are trying to do is to support the people who I think need the support and to hold those accountable who need to be held accountable. Because remember, it's the people in power who have the ability to, let's say, change the situation, to who should be held accountable. The buck stops there when you compare Secretary Carr's responsibility and the escape to Secretary Novak's responsibility in the escape. In my opinion, Secretary Carr is more responsible for the Department of Corrections and certainly the status of that fence, let alone the staffing and the lockdown and everything else, than Warden was. And we all found out how little actual control the warden has, but then they put everything, including the fence and all the rest, on her. Why? Because it couldn't have been Carr, but they felt that the public needed to see that somebody was being held accountable. So that's why we think they did that, and we believe they wouldn't have done that if she was a male. Yeah. I am just going back to that one. It's especially the new warden Fuchs, I think, is really there. That to me is a comparator. That's really disgusting how they treated him so favorably and treated her like she just was in over her head when she had actually way more experience in every capacity than he did. Every capacity. That it was something I think that said it all. The refusal of the judge to compare those people. She would only compare people who had the same job title, which is preposterous. Um, we've got there's just another great case with her that we may have to. We're sort of sitting on the fence if we want to do it, because it does deal with a lot of let's say mental health issues in the prison system as well. So we're not we're not sure how we want to deal with that. Anyways, that case there is very clear. She refuses to compare a sergeant to who is not a supervisor in any way to an officer. Like, I mean, if you just look at the case law on this, it's pretty clear that it doesn't have to be, you know, same pay grade to same pay grade only, and there's no reason why they can't possibly. The test really is do they have a justifiable reason for treating these people differently in terms of, because is it a legitimate business reason? That's what pretext is all about. So, yeah. Okay. So moving on from that there, what I want to talk about is what happened to me when I logged out from my Deliberate Indifference YouTube account on my phone to my signed out account, if you know what I'm talking about. So there's a couple reasons for that, but basically my YouTube had become entirely Mormon stories or, Radio Free Mormon. And then he's a great attorney, by the way. I really encourage you to watch his stuff, especially on the Tim Ballard thing. He's got some great insights on, brief writing. The people who wrote the complaint on the Tim Ballard complaint and with the witnesses, they really rushed out some things, and in fact putting out statements that were apparently speech to text. And he does rip them a new one, but he also is really kind and instructive to everybody else too. So that to me is in a very polite way too. That is, I really appreciate his work, and everybody should be watching Mormon Stories. Not so much for the Mormon aspect of it, which is, particularly interesting, but just the amazing work they do in terms of growth. I mean, I as much as you want to, I'll leave that unabashed. I think that they, the story there that they have of ARC, of people starting from one place, learning and then growing from that's what they do, and that's what we all want. Is this, those are the kind of stories that we all want to hear about. Why? Because they so reflect our own, and that's where we learn things as humans. So no, that's as old as the caves, and may it continue to be so. So I then, moving on from that side of things, we're getting into the law nerd end of my YouTube account, which is basically my distraction watching, and I watch, Time Served, Law Talk with Mike, and the sort of other related clips that channels. Geez, I'm trying to think. Oh, I really like Colin at the moment, and encourage everybody to support the work. By the way, we're at our year anniversary, and we're almost at 5,000, which is fantastic. But almost, by the way, is not at 5,000. So, okay, don't make me, because I don't want to. Thanks. So going on from that, those shows have become more and more restricted, and I think that as we're out of the pandemic, whatever you want to call that, let's say as we're out of the YouTube access, the Zoom access to court, and more courts are becoming open and less on streaming, I think that we're losing a valuable ability for the public to see what's going on. And what my experience that I want to compare with that is, I have a victim that I'm representing in the Milwaukee Municipal Court. So, employment related, client gets assaulted, there is a ticket in the municipal court, and we are trying to find out what's going on because obviously we want the guy to be prosecuted, and we want, if there's any information, we want it. So hey, so we're going from there, and we are trying to go, see what's going on. I want to see what's going on. So the way it is that the attorneys for the defendants and I guess the city attorney and the judge are all on Zoom. The judge is in her courtroom, but she's on Zoom. I think there is a mail. The judges are in their courtrooms and are on Zoom. And but if you want to come watch, you have to go pay for parking and go sit there in those booths, in the pews, which is, kind of defeats the purpose if the defendant's in their pajamas. So, what are you really there seeing? What benefit are you getting? How are you seeing justice done, really? And why is it more difficult for the public to see what's going on than it is for the defendants? That doesn't make any sense to me. They're totally innocent until proven guilty, but just in terms of why wouldn't it be the same? So I asked them for a Zoom link on my own, no problem. Then, by the way, I said, hey, I'm going to share this with the victim, and that was complete flip out from the clerk. I mean, when I say no problem, they're like, no. And then I said, by the way, I'm attorney Ben Hitchcock Cross, and they're like, okay. So, then I get into the Zoom thing, and we all know, because we all watch, that the first thing that you better have is your name right on your Zoom account, or you're going to get chastised. Fair, everybody knows that, right? I swear to goodness I have a lot more empathy for that one, because when I'm on my computer, I can change that no problem. On my phone, it frequently defaults back to the name of the phone, especially on a hard restart. I do not know why that's the case, but and when you log in, you're already in the room, especially if you're getting there from a Zoom link. So you have to, on your phone, get into Zoom, then go out, get the link, and go back in there from there, which I find particularly disorientating when you're on your phone. So, all right. So I get, I'm in a Zoom meeting, and it's got my phone name on it. They don't allow me in. Then they call me and treat me like a defendant. I'm like, I'm not a defendant. I'm Ben Hitchcock Cross. I'm here to what? They're like, well, it already happened. He's out of here. And so I asked the judge what happened. And the judge starts telling me, and I'd say a few seconds in, decides that she's not my secretary or whatever, perfectly legitimate, if that's what she wants to do. But then she looked at me, said, you're in court, take your hat off. And then all of a sudden it was because I want to tell you that besides me being an attorney, besides me having a duty to treat everybody civilly as an attorney, besides me having a normative duty as a human being to treat everybody civilly, besides being in court, the power of the court, the fact that a municipal court judge is a full judge in every respect that a circuit court or federal judge is, the fact that she's got the power to enforce the dignity of her court means that she can put people in jail. So that is always something to keep in mind whenever you're interacting with a judge of any kind. And where does that power come from? It comes from the fact that they have the ability to enforce the dignity of their courtroom. They have the power to enforce their orders too, by the way. And all of that comes from just the inherent concept that if a body has a power to do something, it has the power to enforce it to happen. Okay? So, I think probably the clearest example that everybody can understand here is the post office. Well, do you know the post office has its own police force? Well, they sure do. And the reason that they have their own police force isn't just so that they can terrorize and investigate their own workers. It's also because there is postal fraud. There are crimes that are happening via the post. So you can imagine a situation, particularly in a pre-World War II environment, where the local state is not really that keen on maybe the local politician is at war with the postmaster general in that area for whatever reason. I don't know, but I sure can imagine it happening. Maybe they both wanted the same apple. Who knows? There's a feud or not, or just from priority, you can imagine that the local police chief is going to say, well, I'm going to investigate this murder, or sit on my thumbs rather than investigate this postal complaint. So what would then the Postal Service do? Wait on the pleasure of the local police department or the FBI or whatever? No. They've got the inherent power, and of course in law as well, the power to investigate, to police, and to take care of the things that are within the sphere of its own power. Okay, that's why, for example, the county's parks, they can have special rules. I mean, it flows through all of these things, and usually the power itself is inherent, and then there will be some statutes that go on beyond that to enforce, hey, we're going to have park rangers. Hey, there's going to be tax inspectors, and then we're going to pay for them. That's the same, by the way, that's the same power that the state has that enables them to have a police department. They've got health, welfare, and safety powers. They can make laws over all these things for the general good. Therefore, they can have a police department to enforce those laws and penal system to take care of it. Well, a judge has power within the scope of their courtroom to anything that happens within the scope of their courtroom, because they get to move cases along, because whatever. You can't go in there and say, let's say you didn't agree, by the way, the Adelson murder hitman trial. Julie, what did you do to me? I was trying to ignore that, and then well, I'm already down that rabbit hole, guys. But we'll talk about that some other time, I'm sure. But the point is, they have the power to enforce the thing that they have the power to enforce murder, whatever it is, to get back to enforce their inherent authority. The judge in that courtroom has the power to enforce. It basically is the law enforcement, is the judge, jury, and executioner, as it will, in their courtroom. They also have, if they give an order, they also have the power to enforce that order as well. So if a judge tells you to show up, that's where you got to do it. How did we get off on that subject? Because I was yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, threw my hat on the floor and stood up straight and asked to be excused. That's just how it is. Okay. So that needs to be online. Me getting embarrassed needs to be online. And so does your local municipal court. But also does your circuit court. Not just things that are outside of the realm of divorce and a bond and arraignment should all be up there, okay? Thank you, Judge Middleton, but he's just basically the equivalent of a municipal court judge. I know it's different from Wisconsin to Michigan, but, he is not the circuit court judge. He's not... I cannot believe that I can't remember the names of the circuit court judges above... Stuckland? Oh well, passing along from that, we just say, I want to say how important it is, how much we've learned here about justice being done. I mean, I think if it wasn't for Judge Kim, who's now off the air, and all of those juvenile cases in Texas, I would have no idea, A, how the juvenile system works, and it's very similar all across the country, but B, I mean... in some sense, those children are being treated as the goal here is to rehabilitate those kids, and that's fundamentally different from where it is on the with adults. I totally agree with that. But at the same time, I also saw kids sort of being held accountable on contractual basis or being held for things that they were saying and doing in the courtroom that I didn't believe was commensurate to their powers of being an adult, that their brain function. You can't ask a child to stipulate to something. I do not think you can do that. Even if you explain to them what a stipulation is, and it was very clear to me the difference in level of thinking just between 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds there. I didn't know that before. I think that's the biggest issue there. Also, by the way, I learned that I think that Texas is way more fair on due process than it is in Michigan and certainly Wisconsin. I think a lot of times they're checking the boxes, and a lot of times you'll hear the judge say, did you view this form? Did you read it? Did you sign it in all the appropriate places? And, besides that being a compound question, I think that that's a bit tricky thing to ask. Another one they asked, I think is sort of shocking, is have you received adequate representation? That person in that position has to say yes or no, sir. They're about to be sentenced to 12 years in prison. Texas prison. I mean, no. That person is not going to say, I did not receive it's just not going to happen. And then to use that against them later on, saying you can't say that you didn't receive adequate representation, in my mind, that's not cool. Same vein, by the way, as asking a child to stipulate to something. If you don't know what I'm talking about, they would oftentimes have stipulations or basically asking the child, because if you're going to have a plea deal, you've got to have consent, you've got to have all those knowing, it's got to be all of those things, and they have to sort of go through this colloquy with children about, you accept this plea deal. And they'll accept whatever they can accept to get home to mom. I mean, many of them, and the rest of them are serious psychopath criminals who are on their way there, but there's not a very good way to, tiny fraction, by the way, of psychopathic criminals. I don't want to ever write off anybody, especially a kid, but you can see the way that they're reacting more along the way of an adult criminal would act, as opposed to the kids who are just making the determination of, looking 2 minutes out in the future, because that's what kids do. Okay, so I want to now bridge to the final thing of what I was saying. I'm on YouTube on my signed out thing, and I'm watching a Law Talk with Mike, and love his stuff, by the way, but the content is becoming narrowed, and I do feel like two things are happening, that it's becoming more about shaming poor people, because that's the people who are only on the only people that they have, but also I mean, don't you feel like the quality of the sort of, you don't see as many wild and crazy outbursts as you do. There's fewer sovereign citizens, things like that, which is all to the good. I mean, that's why one of the things that was going on was people were learning that stuff wasn't working. Great. What I want to say is there was a gentleman on there who was defending himself. He had an attorney there, but the attorney really, in my business, was not representing him, in my opinion. When they were going through, and basically as it came out, there was two issues. Number one, this guy's cognitively disabled. No doubt about it in my mind. And he says it basically about 4 or 5 minutes in, that he's been, how long have you been on benefits? I don't know, since I was a little. The judge here is 11. Judge DeSanto, by the way, sometimes I think is not cool with defendants. I think she talks down to them. And believe me, I wouldn't want to have her job for anything. I'd rather teach high school or kindergarten. But at the same time, and bless all educators, but I would not want to have that job. But at the same time, I think a lot of times when she says the word sir, she means says you. That's PG Woodhouse, by the way. But I think that, and I just don't care for that. I don't care for a judge who, again, it seems to me to be kicking down and kissing up. So the bigger issue in this clip is there's a discrepancy between what the attorney reported to the judge as the criminal history and what is the actual criminal history, what's reported to the judge elsewhere. Don't know how it comes up. So when they asked the defendant, like, what's up with these cases, he's like, well, I took care of them. Which, you know, probably meant he went to jail and he paid his fines or whatever else. So in his mind, it's done. Is what I got from that later on, okay? But the attorney says, like, judge, this is what happens when your client lies to you. Something along those lines. It may be like it's hard to represent your client when he lies to you or something like that. And I do want to be fair to him, and I'm not going to link to this clip because it just still kind of makes me mad. But I would expect that if I said anything halfway remote along that lines to contradict my client in any way, that I would expect to be disbarred, or that I should be disbarred, or that I should no longer be an attorney. And I do want to say I did not hear that from anybody on the commentary. I did not hear that from the host, and I certainly did not hear that from the judge, that this is outrageous, sir. And I've heard this sort of thing before in front of the same judge within the last 30 days, that an attorney 100% sells and an appointed attorney 100% sells their client down the river for the purpose of not currying favor with the judge, meaning they're putting themselves, their own reputation, ahead of their clients. That's not how it's supposed to work. You take the hit for your client, and you may make it appear, but you do not ever say that your client is lying, let alone contradict your client. If you have to do that in any way, you certainly do not do that in public or on the record. There's ways to communicate a message, and it's very explicit in the ethics rules, and I'm sure they're the same in Michigan, that an attorney does not, let's say the only time you can contradict your client is when there's a billing dispute that's actually filed. That's pretty much it. So that is just shocking to me. And it's also shocking that nobody said anything. Again, kiss up, kick down. So that, I think, there is sort of my trouble with where all of that's sort of headed at the moment. I think one way that we all need to go against that here is, Milwaukee Municipal Court needs to be open to everybody, just like it is in some places in Michigan. Your local courts need to be open to everybody, and you can easily just go ask for the Zoom link and start from there. You don't need to start a YouTube empire or anything else. That's not the concept here. The concept is, why should it be easier that everybody should have the right of Zoom in these days. If anybody's going to have it, then everybody should have it. And if they have it up, then they shouldn't restrict somebody just because they're a member of the public. That's, I think, a better way to put it. I don't want to say that why do the defendants get to enjoy it if the public can't. But yes, that's, I think, the big message here, and the message also is kiss up, kick down. So I don't like being a part of. I just don't like being a part of laughing at somebody because of their cognitive disabilities. And certainly I don't like it when the attorney is selling that person down the river and I'm supposed to stand there and watch that. And the only thing I can do is make a comment. Well, I got a little bit more. So, hey, thanks for sticking with us. We'll keep you informed. Let's hope, by the way, that you have heard this sound. Hope it was worth it. We'll see.